Welcome to the review of polynomials in preparation for your Math 122 class if you're one of my students. If you're not one of my students and happen to have found this video on the internet, welcome anyway. Please stick around and hopefully you can learn something. Our goal is always to be productive and instructive. Okay, so let's start with a definition. Polynomials. Polynomials are a monomial, or a combination of sums and or differences of monomial. So first, let's see what a monomial is. Monomial is something like this. 15, the number 15, we'll say x to the second power, y to the third power. Let's even go as far as saying z to the seventh power. And let's just take a look at the different parts of this. So the number 15 here is called, in this monomial, it's got a special name, and that name is called the coefficient. And the coefficient is the number that you're multiplying by your variable parts. Now, x, y, and z are all variables. So these three down here are our variables, and a variable, it means something, a number that is unknown or can be substituted. In this case, I have three different numbers, or potentially different numbers, x, y, and z, and each of them can mean a different number. And up top, above the x, the y, and the z, I have what are called my degrees, or my exponents. Now the degree is a specialized term for exponents. Whenever I'm evaluating, in this case, a monomial, and I want to know the degree of this monomial, I take all of the coefficients, all of the exponents. In this case, I have a 2, a 3, and a 7, and I add them together. So this monomial, 15x squared y to the third power z to the seventh power, has a degree of 2 plus 3 plus 7, or 12. And that's important to understand, because you could have a polynomial that looks something like this. 15 x squared minus 12 x to the third power z to the fifth power plus 8 x, and we'll use that for our y, minus 7. And so this is a much longer, a little more complex polynomial. If we were just looking at these two terms would be a binomial. 3 terms would be a trinomial. Here we have 4 terms, and that's good enough just to call a polynomial. Monomial, binomial, trinomial, those are all different kinds of polynomial. So let's take a look at different parts here. First of all, we want to know what are the terms of this polynomial. And the terms, I'm not going to use all the different colors, but the terms are 15x squared. Another term is this negative 12x to the third z to the fifth. Notice I brought in the minus sign. The minus sign is the sign of the 12. It comes from an earlier concept when we look at subtraction as a minus b. That means a plus the opposite of b, or a plus a negative b. So this is 15x squared plus a negative 12x to the third y to z to the fifth. So the sign of this whole term here is negative. So the operator is the sign of the term. This one is a positive 8xy. So we'll do an 8xy. And then we'll say that the last term is the negative 7. These are the terms of this polynomial here, right? Now, the next question is, what are the degrees of the terms? And remember, the degrees are just for each term, what are all of the exponents added together. So x squared, that's only got a degree of 2 because there's only that x squared there. The next term has an x to the third and a z to the fifth. That's got an 8, a degree of 8. Now here I don't have a number, I don't have a exponent on the x and the y, and so when I don't see an exponent, I have to assume that there's a 1, because x to the 0 power means 1. That's our identity there. And x to the first power, any number to the first power, is that number. So here where I don't see an exponent above the x or above the y, I assume that each of those is a 1, so that's a degree of 2. And here, now remember, any number is like saying any whole number or integer or whatever is like saying that number times 1. But another way of saying times 1 would be to say times x to the 0 power. And so my degree of that last term there is 0. So these are my degrees of terms. Now the degree of the whole polynomial is the highest degree of all the terms, and that would be here. So the degree of this polynomial is 8. So the degree of the polynomial is 8. What is the leading term? What should be the first term? Typically, we put polynomials in descending order from the highest degree down to the lowest degree. So here our lowest degree is a degree of 0. That should be the last term. But which of these should be the first term? And in this case, because this term here, the negative 12x to the third, z to the fifth, is the highest degree, then that should be the leading term. So with that knowledge, knowing that this is our leading term, then the coefficient of the leading term should be negative 12. Our constant term will be this last term here, the one that doesn't have a variable connected to it, and that would be negative 7. Those are the parts of a polynomial. In the next video, we're going to take a look at adding polynomials and multiplying polynomials leading up to factoring polynomials.